Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stephen. I'm a traditionally published fantasy author. Today I'm doing another monthly Q&A. This is where people have sent in questions to me on the community tab, and every month I do a roundup of these questions. There is a new post now in the community tab if you want to go and have a look there and post any questions for me, and I will do them the following month. So let's get into the questions. The first question was commenting on a video that I'd previously done about overseas sales and how that worked, and someone had said they'd love to see a video in this style about audiobooks and any insights I have. So if you're not aware of how overseas rights work to do with sale of your books into other countries, I write obviously in the English language, and so do many other authors in the UK and America, but your book is sold usually around the world in English, but when it goes into other countries it has to be translated, and I've done a video on that, so go and check it out if you haven't seen it. Audiobooks are completely different, a very kind of different thing in terms of in the English language. When you sign a deal, typically with a traditional publisher, it will say something like Commonwealth or worldwide rights. That means that publisher who's named in the contract, and my current contract is obviously Angry Robot Books, it means they can sell my books in English anywhere in the world. So if there is an English language science fiction bookshop in France, Germany, Poland or whatever, they can sell that book to them. Obviously it's not the native language of those people, and it might be that you then get it translated, but it allows them to do that. You know, expats living in other countries want to read a science fiction book, a fantasy book, they'll go to one of these bookshops and pick it up. The other part of the deal that is common with traditional publishers is that they cover all of the formats. So it might be that you start your book as a debut author with paperback. As part of that contract, the publisher will also produce the ebook and the audiobook. And once again, you don't pay for any of this. This is all part of the standard normal contract. And with me, for all of my books, all of them, going back to my debut trilogies and then the follow-on trilogy with Orbit, and now this duology, all of them have paperback, audiobook and ebook. The ebook is obviously a lot easier to produce, apart from the kind of the formatting thing. There's no actual tangible thing. It's just a digital file. But with the audiobook, it requires them to produce something, the actual files. But to do that, you have to get the narrator. And what has happened with me with both of my deals and both publishers is they've come to me with a short list of people and said, these are the kind of people we're looking at for the audiobook. Listen to some samples that they've done and let us know if you have a preference. And I've gone through, picked my favourite, and then we've worked with that person and they've produced the audiobook. Now what had normally happened is the narrator will get the book, read it, and if they have any questions, they will then contact me either direct or through the publisher. Sometimes it's to do with pronunciation. Sometimes it's to do with accents. Like they might say, you've got 5 different countries in your fantasy story. Do you have any kind of feel or flavour that you'd like for the accents for each particular nation? Which is what one of the narrators did on my first 2 trilogies, Matt Addis. He came and said, right, from the way you describe this world and this particular country, they're very kind of hardy people and very sort of tough and enduring. I'm thinking like, a Scots type of accent, or whatever it might be. And we've talked it through and gone back and forth, and then he's come at something and give me some samples, and it was great and it was perfect. And obviously pronunciation. Fantasy books are renowned for having all sorts of weird and made up words, countries, monsters, and it's about getting it right, getting it close to the vision that I had for the book. And it's been a fantastic experience every time, and I've really enjoyed it. The other thing to think about with audiobooks and ebooks too in some ways is that a lot of people sort of double dip. They'll read a book on ebook, but they'll also have the audiobook too, and they switch between the two of them. And it's not typical, but my sales breakdown, it varies from book to book, but sometimes it might be that sales could be 50% paperback, 20 to 30% ebook, 10 to 20% audiobook. That's, a typical mix. It could be 4-4-2, it could be something like that. But obviously audio is a bit more expensive, but some people just prefer that format because they can do it whilst they're out doing something else, walking the dog, going to work, riding on the bus, whatever it might be. And they kind of like that. It helps them. And also they can get through books faster in some ways because they're doing it whilst doing something else. They don't have to sit still. So I think audiobooks are important. I don't think they cannibalize sales from other kind of formats. And there again, if people are double dipping, that's great because it's 2 sales. So I'm not going to complain. But sometimes the audiobook format is separate. Sometimes an author will want to take it out of the contract and control it themselves if you're traditionally published. That's pretty uncommon. I have seen it happen a couple of times, but then it's reliant upon the author to go out and find a narrator, get it produced with the studio, get it done in all the right formats, get it distributed to all of the right channels so that it's available on publication date for people. So rather than try and wade into all of that, I leave it to the experts. I leave it to the people who've done this hundreds of times at this point. They've got all the contacts. They know how it works with pricing and so on. I leave them to it. They get on with it. They tell me how it goes. Every 6 months or every 12 months, I get a breakdown of sales, and it's broken down by paperback, ebook, audiobook, so I can see exactly how many I've sold of each book in every format. The next question was, do you find starting or finishing a series harder? That's a tricky one. So, when you start a brand new series, it's really exciting because it's a completely blank page. You're not reliant on other things that you set up. Magic systems, the world, the place, the map that you've got down. If you've done a follow-on series to the previous one, you have to remember all the characters, a lot of information, there's history that you've built up. And so you have to be very careful, you have to get things right, you have to do more research. And it's good in some ways because you've got a framework, you've got something to work within, you know how certain things work already, particularly with your fantasy world, because I write fantasy. If you write contemporary fiction, then you're not worrying about certain things. You don't need to explain what a car is or a telephone or a horse. You can just say it's a horse and people will know what it is. You don't need to go into that kind of detail. As a fantasy author, it's a bit more tricky most of the time. The scary part about starting a brand new series is that it is completely blank, and there's that fear of can I build something that feels accurate within the realms of what you've created, that's convincing enough to the reader that when they start getting into it, it's believable to them. Because yes, they know it's fantasy, but the whole point is they're suspending their disbelief. They're going into this world within their mind in the story, and it all has to fit together in a cohesive way that it's believable. If you put too many barriers in place, too many weird worlds, or too many complicated systems, readers can stumble, they can trip, they can fall, they can just put a book down and say, I just couldn't get into it. Which I've heard, not on mine, but on other books. If it's a 1,200 page book and someone's thinking, okay, this will be really good, and you get 300 pages in, and they just go, I just can't cope anymore, nothing's happened, or, I don't really understand what's going on, I need something to get hold of. That's quite scary with a brand new series. It can be really, a concern in the back of your mind. But I think that fear is useful as well. I think if you can channel that fear, it's good because it keeps you hungry, it keeps you focused on the reader and the story and thinking about it. I'm not writing for a specific reader. I'm not reading my reviews and then changing what I'm writing, but I'm thinking, if I was a brand new person coming to this world, would I understand what I've just described in a way? Is there enough there that the person can hang on to, knowing our world, and get into this one without stumbling too many times? Finishing a series is hard for other ways because you have to wrap things up and give people a satisfying ending. You want it to kind of build to this great crescendo, this great climax, and lots of stuff happens, and people to be really satisfied with the character arcs and everything that's going on. But that can be tough too. You've got to have a lot of good payoffs. You've got to really work at it. You hopefully, like me, if you've planned your stories, you know where it's going, you know where it's leading, and you want people to get to the end and think, oh, I really enjoyed that. And for it to end with a bang, not with a whimper, if people get to the end and go, oh, well, it was all right. I was enjoying it, and it just kind of ended. I've heard some people say about some books. Or I got to the end and it didn't feel right. I didn't like what happened, or there was no good payoff. So it's, starting and finishing a book they're difficult for different reasons, I would say. Here's a great question that someone sent in. They said, what do you do when you disagree with agent feedback? I've run into a few instances of this where I felt like they weren't really taking the time to read what I had written, and the feedback didn't make much sense. So here's what you can do if you're in that situation. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. You should not, under any circumstances, berate, chase, email back the agent in an aggressive or angry way. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, that's just common sense. That would never happen. Every single week, I hear horror stories from agents talking about this, where someone has written back to them and said, you don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? You didn't, and they just complain, you've just burnt a bridge. As I've said in previous videos, there are more agents than there used to be, more agencies that represent specific genres, but there are not an infinite number. It's a small industry, relatively speaking, and they talk. You do not want to burn bridges before you even get in the door. Some agents are so busy, they just give form replies. Some don't give any feedback at all. Some might get mixed up and just send something that makes no sense to what you've written. And it's unfortunate and it's disappointing, but equally, there's nothing you can do about it. If you think about it the other way, if someone comes back to you and they've sent you something that makes no sense, it could be that they're actually not the right agent you really want working on your book. If they haven't taken the time to actually focus on it, or what they've given you is very surface, they haven't got under the skin of your book, and everything else is just, surface content, then do you really want that person representing your work? I wouldn't. When I spoke to my agent for the first time, she gave me feedback on the book and said, these are the areas I like, these are the areas that I think need attention, and I actually was able to go and meet her in person to have this discussion, which is kind of uncommon and is kind of rare because you don't always have to be in the same country as your literary agent. But I was able to go to London and sit down and talk to her about this. Now, if she had said, oh, I think the book is about this and I think you should change all of these things, and none of them made any sense, then she clearly wouldn't have been the right agent. Or she just, hadn't bothered to read it at all and was just kind of skimming through it. It would have been a very different meeting to the one we had. So it's not pleasant when you get feedback that makes no sense. It's not a nice situation. But if you go back and chase the agent, if you harass them, then you're on a blacklist with that agent and you'll never be able to send work to them again. And you really shouldn't do that under any circumstances. Do not be one of those people. The next question was to do with the lead up to my debut book. So my debut book, Battle Mage, was published in 2015 with Orbit Books, and it was the first in a trilogy. And someone has asked, they'd love to hear what I was thinking, feeling in the week leading up to my debut and on the launch day itself, talk about some of the stuff my publishers had asked me to do. So on the lead up to it, I'd been doing some PR, I'd been working with online bloggers. BookTube was kind of early in those days, I would say, so there wasn't really any kind of YouTube presence as stuff as such. So it was all online Q&As, blog pieces. I was doing some stuff on social media. I was doing things on my website, a newsletter, all of this kind of stuff to generate PR and buzz. Then we'd done some advertising to promote the event that I was going to be doing. I did a signing event in London at Forbidden Planet. We got a lot of people turning up there. Then afterwards I went to another event where I did a reading and did some Q&As with some from the audience, and that was really good, and have a few drinks and a good chat and mingle with people and sign some more books. So that was a lot of fun, and that was down in London, which is not where I live, but I went down there for this event. As to what I was thinking, feeling, it had taken me a long time at that point, and many books and many rejections to get to that moment. I remember the day and the place and pretty much the time of when I got that first phone call from my agent saying she'd sent the book off to the editor. We'd given them a 7-day window to respond before it went on wider submission. My phone rang when I was driving. I didn't answer it, but I thought, nobody rings me at this time of day. It's really weird. So I pulled off, got into a car park, saw a voicemail from my agent, rang her back, and she basically told me that the news that the publisher loved the book, they're taking on that book, and they're taking on the first trilogy. And that day was, it was so worth it. All of the work, everything that had gone in leading up to that moment. The launch day itself was a bit of a blur. It was very emotional for me. It was, a dream come true, essentially, something that I've been thinking about and hoping and striving for years, and it was just fantastic. Every new series that I do feels a little bit like that. It's a new world, it's a brand new start, it's a fresh kind of feeling. As you get further into a series on book 2 and 3, you're very much head down working on different things. One book is wrapping up, you're working on another, you're planning a third, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And when that's all done, you have a little bit of space, a little bit of time, and then I start on the next one. And when that one comes out, it does feel like a debut again. There's that great rush, that is that great anticipation of what are the readers going to think, what is the market going to feel like in response to my book, what are they going to say. It feels good, I'm not saying it doesn't, but nothing feels like that debut book. That was the kind of the anticipation and the build-up of all of that work, and that was the huge payoff. So it was a really special time, and I've been very lucky since then to keep writing books and keep being published ever since 2015. I always forget to talk about this, so I'll mention it now. I run a private writing Discord called Headspace. This is for people who are interested in being traditionally published. Mostly, there are a couple on there that are self-published. But we use this forum to comment on each other's work, give feedback on covering letters, initial queries and the first chapters, synopsis. There are ongoing chapters that people post and get feedback from other people on the forum. We've got some traditionally published authors on there in addition to myself who give advice and talk about things and talk about their journey. So if you're interested, there's a link below. If you don't have your own kind of community already, then you can look at that and look at joining Headspace. The next question is a really interesting one and not something I'd thought about. And they said, do you think it's possible for an author to be completely anonymous nowadays? I don't think it is, no. In the age of social media, in the age of you don't have to have a social media presence to be an author. It can help in terms of getting the word out, but as I've said many times, you don't have to have a large following in order to be traditionally published. It is all about the work, it is all about the book. However, if you have 1 million followers on a social media platform, your book is picked up, it's going really well, and on publication day you can then send that news out to your 1 million followers. A small percentage of them will buy the book. It won't be 1 million, it won't be half, it wouldn't even be a quarter, it might be 1/10, 1/15, whatever it might be. It's a very small percentage. That's completely normal. That would be great. To be completely anonymous these days would be very hard. Now, some people do write under pen names, but usually they're an existing author or they're known for something very, very different, and then they move genre, so they have to use a different pen name. But to have no kind of social media presence whatsoever, no website, at the minimum, I think I spoke about this in a previous video, the bare minimum for authors these days is to have a website. So that if someone Googles your name, they find something. There's some kind of basic resource that says who you are, what you've done, what you've written, what the books are, the genres, and where they're available. If that's all completely made up, this in terms of the biography, possible, but to be totally anonymous? No, I don't think you can, because readers love to follow individuals as well as the work. Like they might say, oh, so-and-so's got a new book coming out, and because they know who you are, they'll want to follow you in the future if they like your work. And some of that, not all of it, some of it is to do with the individual too. They want to know that the person they're supporting, the writer, is a good person. I'm not saying they have to be, I'm not saying you have to like the author, but if you read something about the author online and find out they're a massive racist or they're extremely homophobic, you're not going to want to support them, you're not going to want to follow them. And yes, you could say you can separate the art from the person, but I can't really most of the time. If a terrible, terrible person put out an awesome book, I'm not going to read it because that money's going into their pocket. And there are some online, some very well-known science fiction and fantasy authors that have horrendous public opinions that I will not support under any circumstances. And some people I know feel the same way. But being totally anonymous, I think that's difficult in this day and age. The next question was to do with the synopsis. Someone had said, does the synopsis, when you send out a query, is it for the first book or does it have to be for the whole of the series? Your query letter will talk a very high level about who you are, what the book is, what the pitch is, the core concept of it boiled down to its raw essence, and a little bit of a biography. And a little bit of what it is. Well, you know, it's a standalone with series potential, or it's the first in a trilogy, and that's kind of all you detail. The synopsis is a massively detailed breakdown of the whole story, spoiling it, soup to nuts, everything of that first book only. You don't put anything in the synopsis for any of the other books. Typically a synopsis is 1 to 2 pages. Some of them agents set specific word counts, some of them will just say 1 to 2 pages, whatever it might be, but it is just the first book. It's nothing else to do with the rest of the series or talking about it in any way. That's just touched on in your query or cover letter. So those are all the questions I received this month. There's another post in the community tab now. If you have any other questions for me next month, I will do another roundup, but that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'll be back next week with another video.